What's up, insiders? You got Sam here, and I'm back for another exact hack video. Today, we're going to talk specifically about macros. What is a macro? A macro specifically is a way to save a set of line items or F9 notes within Xactimate to reuse consistently, kind of as a feature of like copy paste. It's much easier than having to re-enter the same line items, apply the same F9 notes, etc. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I've got Xactimate pulled up and I've got a test project. I have a list of line items as well as a header. I like to write my estimates to include headers, breaking apart categories or specific types of work. And then I will add the line items as applicable underneath. So in this case, we're just testing things out with flooring activities. So clean floor and prep for overlay of subfloor, CLN FPS, FCC pad for carpet pad, FCC AV for carpet, and FCC AVB for additional labor cost for Berber or patterned carpet. Couple things to note. If you want to save a macro, you can do it two different ways within Xactimate. The first way is you can click, hold shift, select all. Or if you don't want all, you can hold control and select only the ones that are applicable. So otherwise, go right click the group or room, click save macro, and I can save the macro. But wait, now I've got an error. Why do I have this error? Sketch algorithm items cannot be saved as part of a macro. All marked sketch algorithm items will be ignored when saving a macro. I have carpet in here, but the calculation is FLR_RPL. That would be akin to if I did graphical estimating for my carpet. You can't save sketch algorithm line items. So even if it's graphically estimated siding, you wouldn't be able to save that as part of a macro. It has to be an actual numerical calculation. So to get around that, I'll just change this to floor. Now I'll be able to save my macro. So we showed you what saving it looks like from the group or room. Now we're going to select, hold shift, select all, other options, save macro. Now I can call this test_macro, and there's a description. So I can name this carpet macro with Berber. Now you'll notice a few checkboxes here, and these options are important to know what they do, the differences, and why they're important. The first checkbox is save line item customizations. The second checkbox is include attached notes. The third checkbox is shared. So working in reverse order, shared means if you are running a team of estimators, maybe you are the manager of a centralized estimating team. You want to create a whole bunch of macros for your team to utilize. And if you click this shared button and they're all on the same instance, all of those macros will be available to anyone using Xactimate within that instance. So a little bit more helpful rather than everyone creating their own macros or you having to try and share them, import, export. When you're creating it, you can make sure that it's automatically shared with your instance. The next is include attached notes. So you can see on my floor prep line item, I have an attached F9 note. If I wanted to include any attached F9 notes that I have as part of line items for a macro, I would want that option to be selected. Next is save line item customizations. For this, you'll see I have a customization on my FCC pad line item, both in the description and the unit price. The description I've changed, I've hyphenated and said glue down. The unit price, even though this is the standard or average grade carpet pad, it is $1.47. I've updated that in my components tab. If I click this checkbox, the macro is going to save those revisions. If I don't click this checkbox, the macro will not save those revisions, and I will have to make those adjustments every time I use the macro. Now, that could be helpful to know. If you want those adjustments, because it's something you constantly have to do, it's good to do that. But maybe you don't want the adjustments specific to a claim that you're currently working in. You just want those set line items to use as a macro later on. If you don't want the customizations, you can just leave that unchecked. But if you do, you can check that. So we're going to save two test macros just to show what those differences look like. So I'll hit OK here. And now I'm going to save the macro another way, which is the group or room, if you wanted all the line items in the group or room. Save macro, test, room, carpet, room, just a little bit easier. And I'll leave all the checkboxes unchecked. Okay, now you see I've got my two macros here, test macro, test room. So we'll go ahead and input those, and I can do those two ways. So we'll show you that as well. For the room, I'll go ahead and right click a room, click retrieve macro, and then choose, and we'll choose the room macro in this case. As you can see, since I didn't select any of those checkboxes, all of my customizations, F9 notes, didn't transfer into the macro, although my header does remain. So if you have an F9 note that's not attached to a line item, it will save as part of a macro, regardless of if you select that checkbox to retain notes or not, because it's considered kind of a standalone item. Now I'm going to go here, and instead of using the group/room method, I will right click the line item, go to other options, retrieve macro, and then test macro, run. And here we go. I've got my macro, I've got my F9 node since I selected that box, and I've got my customizations for my carpet pad since I selected that box. So very helpful to know just the nuanced differences in how the macros can be utilized and how you can save a macro. Lastly, why the naming and description is important is because it's searchable. So if I want this to be searchable later on, you can see I have a lot of macros as part of my Xactimate because we've got all of the Insight sheet database macros built into our macros and our profile. So if I want to search for it, you can see it'd be a lot easier. Let's say it's carpet or 3-tab, right? I could do 3-tab. Now I get all these 3-tab macros, but it limits that to those so I can find it a little bit easier. So the naming for both the code and the description, very helpful for being able to search through your macros, especially if you have a lot. Now let's talk, how do you import or export a macro? Now I'm currently using Xactimate Online, and importing a macro, it's a little bit hidden on how you get there, but you can do it in Xactimate Online. One important thing to consider with Xactimate Online is import and export isn't done through the main Xactimate window where you have the tools option. You actually do it within a project itself. So for example, I've got my macros tab pulled up here instead of the search tab, and I have an options button here. If I click options, I get a drop down and I have a data transfer option. But this is within the project, not within Xactimate Online within your web browser. So if I click data transfer, you're gonna see that it is for exporting currently. It is exporting from Xactimate to a location of my choice. Getting around that can be a little bit complicated if you don't know what to do if you're wanting to import. But to do it, it generally just assumes that you've selected a macro. So in this case, whether I did or didn't have one selected. So if I want to import, I just need to go to the search bar and put something into close this out. You don't want to see anything within the macro tab, so I put a period. Now I'll go to options, data transfer, and you can see I can now import from a location of my choosing to Xactimate. So somewhat hidden to do it within Xactimate Online, but you can do it. Next, we'll take a look at Xactimate for X1 desktop, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, now I've got X1 pulled up, and we can go ahead and take a look at what exporting and importing a macro looks like. Now, for X1, importing and exporting a macro is like most other things with X1. You would go to the tools option or the tools tab, and then you have the data transfer feature. And here you can choose between import or export. In the event I wanted to export something, I could select my data or where I want to export it to. Maybe I just want to go to desktop. I'll choose that. I'll hit select data. And now I have the option to choose between a project, price list, company header, model statement, or in this case, macro. So I could choose a macro, export any macro, and we would be on our way. Now, maybe I want to import something. Again, I just need to select the location of where I'm importing from. So in this case, maybe again, it's just desktop, select data, and I have a macro that I could then import into my X1 desktop macro repository, and I'm good to go. That is a quick breakdown on how you save a macro, why certain things with macros are important, specifically the title or the name and the description, and different things that you can or can't do with a macro, as well as how you import and export a macro, both within Xactimate Online and X1 Desktop. I hope this has been helpful for you. And as always, if you have any more questions, let us know in the comments. Until then, stay humble.